OTAs are in the books for your Seattle Seahawks. We are here to project the 53-man roster for Seattle in 2023 here on this edition of Seahawks Today by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here. Thanks for joining us. Before we get to the predictions of the roster, a little survey for the 12s at home. If you think the Seahawks will win the NFC West, go ahead and tickle the like button and like today's video. If not, if you do not think they will win the division, comment and tell me why you don't think they will win the division. So a little survey. Let me know one way or the other. Let's get some good vibes going for the upcoming season. Like today's video if you think they'll win the division. If not, comment and tell me why. So here's what we are doing. I am going over the entire Seahawks roster, and we will give our official projections of how the roster will look when the Seahawks narrow things down to 53. Let me say this one more point before we get into all of this. We did factor in the injuries, so something to think about. There might be some names you're like, hey, that guy should be on there. Well, he's hurt right now, so he wouldn't be on there. We'll get to those in just a moment. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Geno Smith and Drew Lock projected to make the 53-man roster. I think the Seahawks carry those two quarterbacks. No reason why I think that Drew Lock shouldn't make this roster with him knowing this system that's been in place. He's been here over a year. I know we've never seen him in a live regular season game, but the coaching staff has said nothing but positive things as far as Drew Lock goes of what he knows about this offense and everything about it. The backfield for Seattle. I got 5 names. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet, DeeJay Dallas, and Kenny McIntosh are your 4 running backs. Nick Bellore also makes it as the fullback and a linebacker as well, so watch out for Nick Bellore of what he could do there. No real surprises in the backfield. The wide receiver spot for the Seahawks, after the first 3 receivers, after Metcalf, Lockett, and Smith-Njigba, then it gets really competitive to see who can make the roster from that point forward. And I think that there's a couple of these guys that could still stick around potentially on the practice squad, but it is going to be a battle to make this roster for a very competitive receiving room after those top 3. Young and Eskridge, I have sliding in for those final spots. A lot of pressure on Dee Eskridge entering 2023 to see if he can finally have a breakthrough season. Name a player that won't make the 53-man roster for the Seahawks. Who's going to be on the outside looking in that won't be on the roster when the season begins in 2023? That's our pinned comment today. You might get an ad break. If so, take advantage of it and name one player that won't make the roster for Seattle when the season begins. The tight end position is pretty predictable. Will Dissly, Noah Fant, Colby Parkinson, all should be on that roster when the season begins. No real concerns or issues with any of those 3 for this year as far as that goes. When you go to the offensive line, though, I got 10 names that I have making this roster. They include Charles Cross, Damien Lewis, Olu, Phil Haynes, Abraham Lucas, Bradford Brown, Big Stone. I got Jake and Greg as well. I got those 10 guys making the roster. Now, the more enticing thing for me is not necessarily who makes the roster for the offensive line, but who starts when the season begins on the offensive line. I think Olu's got a chance to start. I think Anthony Bradford's going to be competitive for playing time. To me, that's the more intriguing battle with this O-line as far as who gets the playing time as opposed to who makes the roster. We have a pretty good idea of who those 10 will be. On the D-line for Seattle, Brian Monet injured. That's why we don't have him included on the 53-man list. But what we do have, though, is Jaron Reed, Draymond Jones, Miles Adams, Cameron Young, Mike Morris, and Mario Edwards making that list. That would mean that Cameron Young would be your starter to open up the season at that nose tackle spot with Monet hurt at this point in time. More positions to get to in just a moment on the defense. Also got special teams as well. Name a player the Seahawks should keep on the 53-man roster. Who is a guy that maybe we're not so sure about is going to make the roster or not? Weigh in the comments section and tell me who should make the roster for Seattle when it's all said and done. Give me one player that you think should make it for the Seahawks. Edge rushers, it is very competitive. A loaded bunch, some young cats, a competition for playing time. 5 guys: Darrell Taylor, Uchenna Nwosu, Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, and Tyreek Smith. And you talk about turnover for this Seahawks team. This position looks a lot different for the Seahawks than it did just a couple years ago. And it's going to be fascinating to see when it comes to playing time. How much can Boye Mafe and Derek Hall compete for that playing time amongst each other? How does that go down in these off-season activities and training camp and everything? Who's going to win that playing time as a rotational piece? Watch out. We'll see what they do there. Inside linebackers. Here's another note. Let me make this very clear so we don't confuse the folks at home. Jordan Brooks, injured. We don't know the timetable of his return. So we'll go with what we know right now. We'll put Vi Jones in that spot for now, along with John Radigan, Devin Bush, and Bobby Wagner as the guys making the list from the inside linebacker position. Also worth noting, Nick Bellore, who we had listed as a fullback earlier, can play some inside linebacker as well. He would be included among this group as well for that 53-man roster number as well. To the corner position now. That's where we find Tariq Woolen, Devin Witherspoon, Tre Brown, Mike Jackson, and Colby Bryant. And kind of like what we talked about with some of the other positions for the Seattle Seahawks, this, for me, is a lot about the playing time as opposed to who necessarily makes it, right? We, I think, all feel pretty good that these 5 are going to be there. Tre Brown might be the guy that's kind of borderline of sorts, but we've seen flashes from Tre Brown in the past. Mike Jackson's been arguably the MVP of off-season activities, according to Pete Carroll. Colby Bryant, I know all the attention was on Tariq Woolen last year with the 6 interceptions he had and being in the Pro Bowl and all that. Colby Bryant was still pretty good as a rookie. He'll probably be your starting nickel corner. Devin Witherspoon, you spent the number 5 overall pick on. Woolen's going to be fantastic. Woolen, we've heard as far as the injury goes, should be able to get in the mix and be able to go as training camp gets along. So watch out. This cornerback room, I think, it'll be very good for the Seahawks as far as I'm concerned. Will Tre Brown make the Seahawks 53-man roster? I think he will. What say you, though? Is he going to make the final roster when it's all said and done? Y for yes, in for no. Weigh in the comment section. Tell me what you think one way or the other. Will Tre Brown make the final roster for the Seahawks or not? Y for yes, in for no. The safety position, as good as any group in the National Football League at this point in time. And Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, Julian Love, a dynamic trio. I think they're all going to see playing time, and you're going to see the 3 high safety looks at times and a lot of flexibility. We talked about on the channel this week the idea of Jamal Adams in like a Troy Polamalu role of sorts where he kind of just gets to fly around and do his own thing. He is going to be a disruptor. Expect him to create a lot of fumbles and turnovers and doing his thing of just, being a guy that just is a floater of sorts, if you will. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. That's going to be Jamal Adams' job. Quandre Diggs is going to be fantastic. Julian Love, I'm excited about. Also, Jarek Reed is going to be interesting as well. The Seahawks picked him late in day 3. He impressed in the offseason program. This is going to be fun to see what the safeties do together. Lastly, the special teams group. Pretty good special teams group as far as I'm concerned. Jason Myers, Michael Dixon, your kickers and punter. And then Chris Stoll is going to hold things down as the long snapper for the Seahawks and be the guy that's, operating that operation there on a special team. So that is the complete roster. I love where this team is headed, what they are building with Pete Carroll and John Schneider, what they've done to retool this thing over the last couple of years. It hasn't been a rebuild in Seattle. It has been a reload for this organization the last few years. How would you grade the Seahawks roster? What do you think of Seattle heading into 2023? Give me your grade. A, B, C, D, or F. How would you grade this roster for the Seahawks? chime in and let me know in the comments section. Hit me up on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Tyler Jones Live, talking about your Seattle Seahawks there, and we'll see you next time right here on Seahawks Today.